Today, I want to talk about what could potentially be the biggest catalyst for crypto in Q4 this year, which could potentially start a massive altcoin narrative in this specific sector. In today's video, I'm going to go over exactly what this narrative is and some of the altcoins that I am looking at that could potentially perform well in the lead up. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is Ethereum, because a lot of people at the moment are saying, Ethereum is dying versus Bitcoin. You can see in front of you over the past few months, Ethereum's been bleeding versus Bitcoin because Bitcoin's really been stealing the show with all the ETF news, with the, flight to safety narrative, with the banking collapse. It really has been Bitcoin's time to shine this year. And that has a lot of people kind of becoming Bitcoin maxis versus other altcoins, Ethereum included. But I want to remind you that when the Bitcoin bulls are at their loudest, when you couldn't possibly think ETH could bleed more versus Bitcoin, that is when things historically tend to reverse. So despite right now market conditions looking far more favorable for Bitcoin than ETH, I think things are going to turn, and I think what could mark the turning point for Ethereum and the Ethereum ecosystem is the Cancun upgrade, the EIP-4844 upgrade that's coming later in this year towards Q4, potentially could be delayed until Q1 2024, but that upgrade is going to be one of the biggest catalysts for crypto in my opinion, because ETH is the leader of the altcoins, and off the back of Ethereum, you have a massive L2 ecosystem and also a huge DeFi ecosystem, which could be the beneficiary of this upgrade. So I want to talk about this catalyst today and why it is so important and some of my altcoin picks from this sector. Now, before we get into any of that stuff, firstly, you have to understand what EIP-4844 is, the Ethereum Cancun upgrade to introduce proto-dank sharding. So essentially, the Shanghai upgrade on Ethereum is now complete. We saw the merge, which transferred Ethereum from a proof of work network to a proof of stake network. Then this year in April, we saw the Shanghai 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗕𝗃𝗧 upgrade, which enabled redemptions of Ethereum on the Beacon chain to facilitate native Ethereum staking. Those two upgrades are behind us. So what's the next big upgrade for Ethereum? Well, it's already underway. The Ethereum devs, since the completion of 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗕𝗃𝗧, have been hard at work with issuing the latest upgrade, which is called Cancun DNEB. Cancun, so the first part of that phrase, refers to the upgrade for the execution layer, whilst DNEB, the second part of the phrase, refers to the upgrade for the consensus layer, hence giving rise to a combined name, Cancun DNEB. So this upgrade targets the scalability of the Ethereum blockchain with a key focus on the upgrade resting on EIP-4844, which is being commonly referred to as proto-dank sharding. Now, proto-dank sharding is a key element in building Ethereum's long-term roll-up-centric roadmap and is expected to improve data availability for rollups and result in significant reductions in gas fees on ETH L2 rollups. And that second component of the sentence there is the key, the reduction in gas fees for L2 rollups, which I'm hearing will be by an order of magnitude. And you need proto-dank sharding in order to pave the way for future rollup solutions, which we can see exemplified in Ethereum's roadmap here. We know ETH is currently conducting a very vast roadmap, which will probably take the best part of a decade to complete. You have the merge complete. You have the Shanghai upgrade complete, which now allows staking. Now we are on to the second part of this roadmap here, the surge. And the first part of the surge, if we actually zoom in, as you can see, is EIP-4844 and then EIP-4844 implementation. This is a vital part of the surge in order to help Ethereum reach, as we can see here, its goal of 100,000 transactions per second to be completed in order to make Ethereum a more scalable network. So let's go into the specifics of proto-dank sharding. So proto-dank sharding is a method to significantly reduce the cost incurred by rollups in adding data from rollup transactions to L1 Ethereum, so the consensus layer of the Ethereum network itself. We can see here on L2s, whenever you send ETH back and forth, as you can see in front of you, or swap tokens, you do pay a fee. Now, the fees on L2s are significantly cheaper than Ethereum, but when we think of our ultimate L1 network, do we still think that 12 cent, 14 cent, 21 cent sends during quiet periods of the market, or 38 to 50 cent swap fees is really what we want? The answer is probably no. I mean, in order to make this network fully scalable, Fees need to be so low that you don't even feel the pinch. And for some people, they might start feeling the pinch when you are doing more complex transactions during periods of network congestion, where you may end up paying, even on current L2s, $2, $3, $4, $5, even up to $10 I've seen sometimes worth of fees per transaction. It's too much. So what this is going to do, this new upgrade, EIP-4844, is significantly reduce these fees. And look, fees won't be at their final lowest target amount after this upgrade, but it will be a significant decrease, the most significant decrease in L2 fees we have currently seen to date. But more importantly, it's going to pave the way for fees going even lower once this solution, EIP-4844, is implemented. Now, at the moment, rollups are able to reduce the cost of transactions by batching thousands of transactions into a single transaction. That's essentially how a rollup works. It rolls up all of these transactions into one singular transaction, and then it posts the data to the L1, which is Ethereum, of course, as call data. However, since the transaction is posted to Ethereum, where it's still having to be processed by Ethereum's nodes and stored on chain, that clogs up the network and makes single transactions very expensive. I mean, we can still affirm here that, a 20, 30, 40 cent gas fee, even at its cheapest, is still relatively expensive if we think about, what the purpose of these networks is long term, and that's to have millions and millions of users. So that places a floor essentially on how low the transaction fees can get on rollups. That floor can't be reduced until that solution is implemented, and of course, this solution is going to be proto-dank sharding. So Cancun Ethereum, which will bring EIP-4844 live on the Ethereum network, is expected to be completed at the end of Q4 2023. It's considered the next major upgrade after the 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗕𝗏 upgrade and the merge. 𝗕𝗵𝗂𝗏 obviously went live on April 12, 2023. So that is essentially what it's doing, and you can see here exactly how sharding actually works. You can see you have the beacon chain, which is your coordination layer, which talks to different shards here, and essentially this allows you to reduce fees on the network on L2s. Now, what does this mean for the Ethereum price? What does this mean for the price of L2s? Well, I believe there is a bigger narrative here brewing. Now, as you can see in front of you, Crypto McKenna says capital flows here, so over recent weeks, have heavily favored Bitcoin over ETH, and we have seen this with demand for Bitcoin through the ETF news, for demand for Bitcoin with the whole store of value narrative during the banking collapse, with just demand for Bitcoin given the current ambiguity of the regulatory environment, with lots of altcoins being called securities, and even some sort of uncertainty surrounding the Ethereum token itself. I mean, that has created an environment where Bitcoin is performing a lot better than ETH and a lot better than alts. But I do think people are now starting to get a little bit too carried away, and probably will for the next few months continue to get too carried away with the Bitcoin long, because they are forgetting that Ethereum has its biggest catalyst for basically the entire year coming in Q4. Now, it may get delayed because we've seen delays before, but at the very least, let's assume Q1 2024. And in the lead up to that narrative, you may actually see things start to flip at a certain point. So my thesis for ETH this year is that yes, it continues to maybe bleed versus Bitcoin, but at some point, we will see a reversal heading into the EIP-4844 upgrade, and this will be the turning point for not only Ethereum, but some of the alts I'm going to talk about in a second, which are in the L2 niche. So Fabian makes a couple points here. He says, look, the Bitcoin spot ETF won't come before 2024. EIP will be the more immediate narrative. Meanwhile, 41K Bitcoin will be sold in 6 months. Obviously, we have the Silk Road Bitcoin as well as the Mt. Gox Bitcoin as well, adding some supply overhang to the Bitcoin network that ETH doesn't have. So I think it's really interesting to actually look at how ETH has performed prior to previous upgrades, and there is a trend starting to emerge. Now, keep in mind, this is a relatively small sample size. We only have a sample size of 2, but during the merge, ETH significantly rallied off its lows at sub 1,000 to make new local highs into the merge. Then we saw a sell-off. The Shanghai upgrade, we saw the same thing happen. We saw an ETH narrative take hold. We saw ETH significantly increase in price leading up to Shanghai. And then after Shanghai, we saw a sell-off. Will we see the same thing now with Cancun? I think to some extent we probably will, where we see some sort of pre-Cancun upgrade rally and then maybe some sell-off just before or after the upgrade. But if we do get dip buying opportunities on L2s and on Ethereum in the meantime, these could be some of our best performers heading in to the Cancun upgrade. I have this date set for December, but it may be slightly later. We don't know. All we know is that they are saying roughly Q4, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt and saying, look, maybe it gets pushed into Q1. So if this upgrade does get confirmed for Q4, and I'm sure we'll get a date soon, what will be the best performers in the lead up? Well, we have to think about the major beneficiaries. So just think about what the Cancun upgrade is doing. It's reducing fees on L2s. So what are the biggest beneficiaries? Well, they're L2s. Why? Because L2s now become cheaper, which means there is less of a barrier to entry to use L2s, and people on other competing L1 networks, when they now have a choice between two networks, they can now use Ethereum L2s at the same cost of other L1s, which kind of makes it a more attractive proposition to what it was previously. Also, even if we don't look at it from a technical perspective, it's just hype, right? I assume this will be a narrative that perpetuates later in the year. For right now, it's kind of more Bitcoin's time to shine, but later in the year, I definitely see this kind of becoming a narrative, just like Shanghai did. Remember how much hype for the Shanghai upgrade there was. Remember how much hype for the merge there was. It was crazy. And that's why you got these huge price run-ups. I think the same will happen on ETH, but we will probably see L2s outperform. And that's just the law of their size. I mean, they've got smaller market caps. They're more prone to price movements. They're more prone to buy pressure. Because they're smaller market caps, so it takes less liquidity to actually pump the token versus ETH. So if we look through the list of L2s, we have Arbitrum, we have Optimism, we have 𝗕𝗫𝗂𝗵𝘄𝗽, we have Metis, Loopring, we have some of the upcoming solutions, zkSync, Starknet. These can all be potential proxy bets for betting on the EIP upgrade later in the year. A couple that I really like Arbitrum, and I also like Optimism, especially in the short to medium term. I think they will be two of the most speculated upon coins ahead of this narrative, and also two of the biggest beneficiaries, because if we actually go onto DeFi Llama here, you will see out of all the chains in crypto, they actually rank really highly, with Arbitrum coming in at number 4 for TVL and Optimism coming in at number 6. But I want to dive deeper on the individual tokens and actually start creating some sort of rank for you, because I want to actually rank these tokens in a video to help you understand from an investment perspective how I'm feeling ahead of the EIP upgrade. So what I am going to do in tomorrow's video is I'm going to be ranking all these L2s, and I might even include a couple bonus L2s when I record tomorrow's video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank them all in order of the S tier, so my favorites, to the D tier, so my least favorites. So sorry to keep you guys hanging, but in tomorrow's video, I'm going to rank these because I want to separate the discussion about what the Cancun upgrade is and what the investment potential of these assets are into separate categories. So I think it does deserve a dedicated video. Of course, on a website like Gains Network, you can trade a lot of these tokens. So you can see in the top right, you can connect to two L2s, the Polygon or the Arbitrum network, and you can trade Arbitrum. You can also scroll down here and you'll see you can trade Matic. So a few of the L2s are actually available for you to trade if you want to trade on gTrade. But just in general, just to give you an example of what this EIP Cancun upgrade is going to do, is when you use an application like gTrade, it's actually going to be a lot cheaper for you now. So a real example is if you're opening trades as normal, let's say you open a Matic trade or a Bitcoin trade or an Ethereum trade on either the Polygon or the Arbitrum network on an app like Gains, it's now going to be a lot cheaper after this upgrade takes place because you're going to be paying less in fees. So I think this could actually be also a catalyst not only for individual L2s, but also dApps that are heavily used and heavily traded upon, because it just lowers the barrier to entry and just makes it a little easier for the average person to use from a fee perspective. So of course, if you do want to trade on Gains, there is a link in the description below to trade. But I think it's a good example of what can happen after this upgrade takes effect. If there are any other L2s that aren't available on Gains to trade, you can actually trade them on an exchange like OKX. And right now we actually have a $10,000 mystery box giveaway. So if you do want to win $10,000 worth of prizes, potentially, you're not guaranteed, but if you do sign up for an account, you'll get a chance at winning $10,000. All you need to do is sign up using the link in the description to claim your mystery box. You may get nothing, you may get $5, $10, $100, who knows, but if you want to have some fun and you also want an exchange where you can trade a lot of these coins, then there is a link in the description. And as you can see, if we go to OKX here and we search up a bunch of markets, so Arbitrum, they have a pair, Optimism, they've got a pair, Matic, they've got a pair, let's even see if they've got Metis, they've got it, so they've basically got every L2, so if you are interested in trading L2s, or just buying them spot or accumulating or whatever you may want to do, this is definitely a good option because the pairs are there for you using the link in the description. So keep your eye out for tomorrow's video where I'm going to rank some of these projects, and we're also going to discuss the fundamentals for each one. I think some of the rankings are going to shock you. I'm sure it's going to be a controversial video because, yeah, people are going to complain. But I do have logic and I've done my research and I've got reasoning for why I'm placing things where I'm placing them. So sorry to keep you on a cliffhanger, but it's definitely going to be worthwhile the wait until tomorrow. Hopefully you learned something from this video. It truly is probably the #1 narrative I'm looking out for this year, and something I'm really, really excited for. And I will see you guys on the other side. Have a lovely day. Peace out.